when she's told us that, well, some people say that we don't get these funds because we don't even know how to write proposals. But if we had our own little fund and we ask, okay, we've got X amount, can you please add to it for us?
Exactly.
We are going in this direction.
Yes, yes.
If they see a clear direction,
yes,
would they not be more willing to help us?
Absolutely. In fact, I think this is one of the actual templates that they require. They're required to see this sort of institutions and infrastructures on the ground and commitments. You know, but how are we going to get them on the ground if we just allow our civil servants to sort of, you know, miss the job description? Because, you know, to my understanding of the English language, civil servant, that means you are a servant to the civil society. So, you know, they're not serving us very well if they're not able to establish just basic institutions that will handle the funds, that will do the right sort of things, like, hey, the ecology fund, trillions and trillions of naira. What has it done in order, you know, to ameliorate environmental issues? You know, but however, you know, we have something that we can use. In fact, I brought a weapon. I put it in my pocket. Your security people didn't see my weapon. I'm going to bring it out now. Live television, weapon of warfare. Baba. What's this?
ID card.
Voters card, PVC. Say no more. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I just wish at the vice presidential debate there had been more emphasis. There was hardly any. I don't think there was any emphasis on environment. They didn't throw any environment questions in there. They spoke about agriculture because it's the environment that is the key thing, and you need to get the right sort of people in the right place. If you're doing well, you stay. If you don't do well, you go. We bring somebody else in.
Okay, Chima, before we get back to Dr. Onoha, that issue of funding. So Nigeria spends about $10 billion on the SDGs. Now, of that 10 billion, 8.3 billion for now comes from the government, about 2.3 billion comes from the private sector, so to speak. So, but what is required is about $91.9 billion. Now, in all of that, in that conversation I said I was at, they talked about the need to invest in renewable energies, in sustainable living. But when we talk sustainable living here, we talk about caring for the environment. We talk about cutting down on carbon emissions, reducing the carbon footprint. We talk about managing our water resources, cutting down on energy consumption. So that means use energy-saving materials here and there and all of that. But it was more targeted at the private sector, saying everybody needs to up the ante. What do we do to encourage climate funding in country before we look at what the donors from outside are going to bring in? Where we get, how do we encourage the private sector, the individuals, to fund the things going on here, to set up things like the Lufasi parks, individuals? How do we do that?
Okay, to start with, looking at the NDCs, that is our climate targets for the Paris Agreement, is going to cost Nigeria, to transition to a green economy, is going to cost Nigeria about $1.45 billion. That is a World Bank report on that. And that was...
$145 billion?
Yes, $145 billion. And that's why Nigeria looked into avenues with the present Under-Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, and former Minister of Environment, Amina Mohammed. Under her tenure, they were able to bring about the green bonds. And the green bonds have been oversubscribed. Part of the things green bonds is supposed to use to finance clean energy projects. It's supposed to use capacity building in order for us to transition to a greener economy. That's firstly. Now, secondly, if you look at the global climate finance source, the whole climate finance funding platform mechanism, you have more than 50% of the funding comes from private sector. So in order to move climate change funding, in order to move climate resilience, climate development forward, we need to have a private sector on board. Now, climate finance is a new thing. I would say in Nigeria, so many people are not aware of climate finance, and so much opportunities that we have that we can actually assess funding for climate-related projects. Now, recently, AFDB had a training with the private sector we had a CBN there to encourage them, to teach them about climate finance. And you had some banks saying they didn't know about climate finance, they didn't hear that, who are the custodians of this fund? These are the questions they're asking. How do we get these funds? That is there any training? And most of these organizations are not, these banks are not aware that there is actually training for private sector. International organizations, the Green Climate Fund is actually trying to bring on board private sector, and they're actually trainings for private sector. Now, the ways we can encourage, okay, before I digress, I also wanted to mention that there has also been a lot of investments in clean energy in Nigeria. Now, let's say we are not getting enough funding to, obviously, to sort out all the issues, but we're getting some funding. We're getting quite a lot of funding. We're getting funding from, we have the development agencies, like I mentioned, we have USAID, we have DFID, we have them all, GIZ, putting energy and putting funding for helping in clean and renewable energy projects. We have so many projects that have been successful. You have NGOs, you have social enterprises that have gotten funding for biofuels, biomass, waste to energy projects. So we have all that happening in Nigeria. But the best way to bring the private sector on board is for them to understand the volume of funds, to understand how they can impact, and to realize that these are parts of the CBN sustainable financing principles that we have to all, because the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, is actually for our progress. So we have to bring everybody on board, and we have to make them understand that we only have one planet. If the planet dies, we can't conduct business. We can't leave.
I've been told we have to go now. Dr. Nora, again, I crave your indulgence. We're going to have to bring you back to talk more about how to ensure we take this forward. Dr. Magnus Onora is the president of Sustainable Energy Practitioners Association of Nigeria, and he's a development economist. Thank you for joining us from our Abuja studios. We have Chinma George, who's an environmental activist and climate financing specialist. Thank you for joining us. And Desmond Majikodumi, an environmental cardinal and creation carer.
And I bestow upon both of you the official Creation Carer badge.
Thank you.
And you will wear it at Lufasi Nature Park when you come there. You can do a close-up on her Creation Care badge now.
Thank you very much, Desmond. We are now Creation
Carers.
And we'll be back for the home stretch. Please don't go away.